I welcome you to the Top 10 channel. Subscribe to the channel, put a like, and we start the next top. 10 Ghoulish Corpse Eating Creatures. Every year, many examples of animals consuming human bodies are reported. It isn't only a myth that pets are compelled to eat their owners' rotting corpses after a disaster. In certain circumstances, horrible infestations occur in what should be sterile therapeutic settings, such as hospitals and morgues. Wild creatures scavenge human remains at other times. Eaters of the dead are sometimes even urged to do so. It may be an insult to our presumed human dignity, but flesh is flesh when all is said and done. Cadaver Rats. Doris Kennard received a $237,000 verdict on July 18, 2014, for emotional anguish caused by corpse-eating rats at Providence Hospital in Washington, D.C. Kennard was hired to clean the dead, and he had to deal with flesh-eating vermin that chewed through corpse bags and seethed through cadavers' nether regions. She was admitted to the hospital in 2010 after suffering a rat attack after pulling a tail. "We profoundly disagree with the ruling and will launch an appeal," said Providence Hospital attorney Hugh Farrell. The plaintiff's contention that the hospital fabricated reports in a decade-long rat cover-up is supported by evidence. The hospital gift shop was forced to close in January 2014 after a customer discovered mouse droppings in a bag of rodent-chewed food. Kennard first sued in 2012, and Providence Hospital's motion for a mistrial was denied. Flesh eaters of the Ganges. The Ganges River in India has a corpse problem. Cremation near the sacred watercourse, according to Hindu custom, brings salvation. Often, bodies are not completely burned before being thrown into the river. Those who cannot afford cremation are thrown away in their entirety. Hundreds of human bodies, as well as 50 tons of cremation ash, are thrown into the Ganges every day. The Indian government attempted to solve the problem of necrotic pollution in 1980 by introducing corpse-eating turtles. The Indian government invested $32 million on 25,000 soft-shelled Trionyx gangeticus, a terrapin known for raiding cremation pyres. The turtles were raised on a diet of dead fish to prevent them developing a taste for the living. 10 turtles could devour an entire human corpse to bones over 2 days. However, mismanagement and corruption doomed the plan from inception. With no one monitoring their survival, turtles were poached into annihilation. The Ganges' corpse problem persists. Dog Hoarding Nightmare. Authorities in Arkansas discovered a gang of roughly 50 corpse-eating canines aggressively guarding their snack, their owner's remains, in November 2015. Deputies were unable to approach the victim's trailer when they arrived. Retta Tharp, an animal control officer, was forced to fire 9 dogs in order to reach the murdered 65-year-old woman. Hepatitis C was the cause of her death. Her 46-strong pack was forced to turn to the sole accessible source of food: her body, due to a lack of other possibilities. The woman has previously been prosecuted for dog hoarding. When the county realized she was suffering from hepatitis, they decided to take the dogs away from her. The real hazard emerged when they began to roam into neighboring yards, according to Tharp. Tharp and a veterinarian worked feverishly to save or euthanize the pets. 27 had to be killed in the end. Outside the trailer on Euler Road in Van Buren County, dogs still roam. Corpse-eating gators. A pair of alligators were seen consuming a corpse on the border of the Everglades in May 2016. Authorities were alerted to the gruesome discovery in a canal west of US 27 in Broward County by fishermen. Investigators were initially unable to determine sex since the remains looked to have been in the canal for some time. The midsection of the carcass was devoured by the crocodilian pair, one giant, one small. "We are considering this as a homicide unless we find otherwise," Davie Police Captain David Engel said. Around 10:00, the body was pulled from the canal. A dive crew was dispatched. Officers armed with AR-15s lined the bank, ready to shoot any lingering crocodilians. It was too early to tell whether the alligators were killers or just scavenging, according to a spokesman for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission. Authorities will have to recover the man-eater if a reptile is determined to be responsible. Paraplegic living corpse. Authorities uncovered a neglected paraplegic guy who had turned into a maggot-infested living corpse on December 30, 2015. A complaint of a 36-year-old man having problems breathing prompted Concord police to arrive. Authorities discovered Mark Fulgham sitting in feces on a dirty mattress, surrounded by cockroaches, dead flies lodged in the ceiling, and the stench of rotten flesh when they arrived at the site. The flat was deemed unfit by authorities. Maggots seethed through the man's bedsores, and he was unable to speak or breathe. In the hospital, he passed away. Dormanisha Lawson, 37, the man's wife, has been charged with homicide, negligence, and child abuse. Authorities described it as one of the worst incidents of child abuse they'd ever witnessed. Lawson lived with her paraplegic husband, their 11-year-old kid, and their 19-year-old son, who has severe autism, according to sources. Lawson gave no reason for her absence other than that she was tired and stressed. Lawson was sentenced to 4 years in prison in 2016. Emile of Veal. In August 2013, authorities discovered that a British woman's cats had been gnawing on her remains for weeks while it remained unnoticed. When neighbors noticed Janet Veal's mailbox was overflowing, they called the cops. Police entered through an unlocked second-floor window using a ladder. Inside, they discovered a filthy house with waste stacked high, as well as a significant lack of fresh air. There were a number of deceased pets, including at least one cat and a dog, as well as many live cats. In the kitchen, they discovered Veal, 56, who had been largely consumed. It was evident that key pieces of Mrs. Veal's body were missing, said coroner Keith Wiseman. Her remains were extremely deteriorated, making the cause of death impossible to determine at first. Dr. Vipul Foria, a pathologist, believes her death was caused by chronic obstructive lung disease. Veal was described as a recluse, since she had been estranged from her spouse for over a year. Poacher Poetic justice. When British tourists on a sunset cruise on the Zambezi River in 2015 watched a crocodile consuming a corpse, they got more than they bargained for. Their guide initially mistook it for an animal and called attention to the sight. One witness remarked, "All there was to see of him were his trousers." Authorities were unable to find any of the man's skeletal remains. There were no instances of anybody going missing in the surrounding areas. They do, however, have theories about who he is. Trevor Lane of the Bejani Trust, a Zimbabwe conservation organization, alleges, "We strongly assume this man was a poacher." A party of 13 Zambian poachers had been attacked by rangers 2 days prior. There was a shootout. One person was killed. Only 9 people made it across the river, according to rangers. 3 people are still missing. The victim may or may not have been injured. On the Zambezi, crocodile attacks are common. Communication breakdown. Outside the post-mortem chamber of Bihar Hospital in India, feral dogs devoured the body of a female visitor in December 2016. Pema Chodhan, 53, was hit by a speeding truck in Begusarai, according to officials. The next day, a band of wild dogs was seen consuming the Bhutanese woman's body parts. Chodhan was on her way to Bodh Gaya to attend a feast with the Dalai Lama when she died. The deceased was taken to the hospital for a post-mortem examination. What transpired afterwards is a point of contention. Concerned health officials left her remains outside the post-mortem room, and some stray dogs ate some pieces of the body, police said. Harinarain Singh, the district's civil surgeon, criticized the cops. He claims the officers did not even bother to notify him of Chodhan's arrival and simply placed his body outside the post-mortem room. Tiger shark surprise. Filipino fishermen caught a tiger shark with a half-digested human head in its stomach in November 2014. Bodoy Gorgid, 48, caught the monster on a hook and line between the islands of Camiguin and Bohol. He was so appalled that he threw away everything but the jaws and fins of his terrible capture. Expert diver Jake Miranda of the Surigao Dive Club thinks the shark was 12 feet long and weighed up to 660 kilograms. based on the teeth. The identity of the victim is unknown. Some speculate that he was among the missing passengers on the ill-fated M.V. Maharlika 2 ferry, which sank in September. 2 male passengers are still missing. Perry Santillana's wife insists on getting rid of the shark's jaw, claiming that if they don't, the dead man's soul will torment them at night. 5 vulnerable shark species are protected in the Philippines, but the tiger shark is not. Man-eating terriers. A UK woman died of an overdose in January 2015, and a Jack Russell Terrier and a Staffordshire Bull Terrier ate her. Noelle Bainham, 61, a former jeweler from Hampshire, died in a fall while on her way to the bathroom. For days, her pets went without nourishment. Grant Donovan, a friend, came by to see how Bainham was doing. He noticed an open back door and entered after no one answered his knocks. He called the situation "the most awful thing I've ever seen," and informed authorities right away. Bainham died from a painkiller mixture that caused a stroke, according to the coroner's report. Because the terriers ate most of their owner's essential organs, determining the cause of death was first difficult. Dr. Amanda Jefferies, a pathologist, said there was enough evidence to rule out homicide in Bainham's death. Scratches on her chest indicated that the dogs had struggled to wake her up. Both terriers had to be put down. Subscribe to the channel and like it. There are still many interesting stories ahead.